What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Rankings. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, I'll let you do the honors today. Who are we ranking?
Drizzy Drake, baby, the sixth god, Drake. Many albums to discuss. A new one, Certified Lover Boy, on the way in 2021, we assume soon. So, no better time, once again, to talk about everything else, because there's plenty already when it comes to Drake and ranking. So, gotta get to it.
We have Aubrey Graham, aka Jimmy Brooks, aka Wheelchair Jimmy,
Hmm.
aka Drizzy. Like you said, I fucking feel you, bro. Yeah, there's a lot to get into with Drake, and it's kind of hard, I guess, to pick like the best place to start, right? Because I mean, we're going to be talking about 8 albums today, right? So 7 solo Drake albums, and then the Drake Future collaboration, "What Time to Be Alive." But he put out quite a bit of music before that. Um, you know, uh, so Far Gone, I think it maybe is the best place to start because that was definitely my first introduction to Drake. And I have very specific memories of being in uh, Albany houses somewhere on Washington Ave or Central Ave, in basements, in people's like weirdly
Yep,
lit rooms,
shooting
listening
ghetto.
to, yeah, listening to Successful, playing beer pong, drinking out of cups, being a bitch. Like it was a ooh, man, some very specific memories listening to music from that album. Was that your first introduction as well?
No, I had not. I didn't hear So Far Gone first. My first introduction was Forever, actually. His
Mm.
single off the LeBron James More Than a Game movie soundtrack,
Hell yeah.
featuring Kanye, Jay Z, and Eminem. And of course, that was a big like Eminem is back and sober now, post everything that happened with Relapse. That was like a big flashpoint moment leading up to Eminem's recovery album, which of course was huge. But I remember hearing that on the radio and liking it. It's like, oh, who's Drake? This is new. And then I remember exactly where I was at my friend's house on a desktop computer watching the Forever music video. I don't think it like premiered. I think I just finally watched it. And I realized that Drake was Aubrey Graham, aka Wheelchair Jimmy from Degrassi, and it blew my fucking mind. Because I had a distinct, memory already of what Drake sounded like because I had heard Forever a bunch. And then I realized it was someone I knew as an actor, and I was like, "What the fuck, dude?" Completely rocked my world there.
Yeah, no, totally. It's kind of funny to like go back and watch some of those Degrassi clips, knowing Drake as the artist that he is now, and obviously, like you alluded to, there's a lot to dig into with Drake the star, Drake the musical artist, Drake the celebrity. Um, you know, I I guess like one of my first memories, of Drake as like a rapper, but also just like as a celebrity was there used to be this take of like this guy who would do blogs as Ghostface Killer. It wasn't really Ghostface Killer, and he would just rank like the softest artists in the game. And every time he would like save like the last 3 spots for Drake, and he would just be like,
Wow.
this he is like the softest rapper ever. I mean, he always did it in like a much funnier way. But that was kind of like I feel like one of the first things that I remember being a knock on him was people just saying, he makes this really soft music. It's really sing songy. It's
Mhm.
not hard. It's exactly what people don't want out of rap, right? And I was like, I don't know if that's a fair criticism necessarily, but I do think that that's something that you kind of get with Drake is he's in his feelings a lot.
Well, it was definitely a more fair criticism at 2010 than it is in 2020 because now
For sure.
everybody sounds like Drake. Melody is the name of the game.
Yep.
Singing and rapping is more popular than just rapping.
Mhm.
uh, Drake really kind of engineered a lot of the alternative R&B side of things too. If you really listen to it,
Mhm.
think of someone like Bryson Tiller, a direct descendant of Drake.
Yep.
Um, and that's funny because that stuff has really gone away. I think in general, Drake has become a more diversified artist, so it just like doesn't make sense as a criticism anymore because he's just more versatile.
Mhm.
And he's also made plenty of hard shit now, and I think he does have a good pen when it comes out in songs. So you know, but that it does make sense that that was like something you would hear because when you're back in the day, he had like a higher pitched voice in a certain sense. Like
Mhm.
just as a younger man, like he just sounded different than he does today. But it is funny to listen back because again, similar to artists like J Cole and Kendrick coming up around the turn of the decade, blowing up first on the internet back when being on the internet was very different than being on the radio versus now everything's all the same. Like the Drake come up is also like kind of ancient at this point. Like no one does it that way, right? He has those two mixtapes, Room for Improvement, Comeback Season, Replacement Girl. Some people that's their first song, the first Drake hit, featuring Trey songs.
Mhm.
And then you get the So Far Gone first as a mixtape, and then like what 8 9 months later as a commercial EP, and that's like the debut of Drake. And like you said, successful. Best I ever had. I'm going in. Three really successful songs right off the jump for him. The best I ever had remix with Nicki. I remember being really awesome.
Mhm.
Obviously, that Young Money synergy back when being under Lil Wayne really meant something back then as like a rap crew.
Yep.
And then Thank Me Later comes out actually pretty soon. Like it's kind of funny to look back on. And I always think of Forever as a Thank Me Later song, even though it's not technically on it.
Yeah, you mentioned those three. Best I ever had, I feel like was everywhere. Back when it first came out, and it just felt like there was definitely something happening. And Drake as an artist was someone that was to reckon with. Then Thank Me Later came out, and I think that there's a couple of tracks on here that I think are pretty good, but overall, I found Thank Me Later to be a bit disappointing. Only because I think uh, I don't know. I don't think the bangers were as high for me as they were
Mhm.
on something like So Far Gone. And I was kind of like, oh, this feels like a little bit of a step back. Especially listening back now, I found this to be a pretty um not super interesting, listen. I guess
Yeah.
maybe like Up All Night is obviously I think the standout for me. But what
Yeah,
about
I
for
would
you?
yeah, I would definitely not call it interesting. And listening back now, it definitely feels a little dated. Like obviously there's obvious stuff like, just Drake's tone of voice is just different then. But for the production choices, even the song structures as like rap songs, just it feels more of that time, like the rise of
Mhm.
internet rap and stuff. And I think a lot of like early Big Sean coming out around the same time too also feels like weirdly dated to me at this point. But going back, I was actually surprised at how much of these songs I think are still pretty good. Like, yeah, they're dated. Like Over, that was like my first like real big like love of a Drake song after Forever had come out. Like listen to Over now, listen to Show Me a Good Time, Up All Night with Nicki, Miss Me with Wayne. Like they're
Mhm.
solid tracks, but they just feel like of a different time than me. I have a hard time actually going back to them, but I still like them. And Fancy, just the drop of like Swizz doing the hook on Fancy. I love to DJ with that. I thought that shit still
Yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah, and I think something like Fancy, you can kind of hear some of the things Drake kind of takes and really, I think, leans on for the more successful albums, that like bigger band sound, a little bit more, kind of almost like, I feel like I use this comparison a lot, but almost like Bond esque, where like it's like fully, a really full sound rather than it being like a more stripped down beat. And I think definitely like saying that this is a dated album makes a lot of sense because like you even mentioned what Over, and like the the bells on that, I guess, or the
Mhm.
xylophone, whatever that
Yeah.
instrument is. It's kind of like ding, ding, ding. That's just very like 2010s to me. But yeah, I think definitely listening back, I was not super impressed with "Thank Me Later," but then we get "Take Care," and this feels like a real jumping off point for Drake. And I think a lot of people look at "Take Care" as you know, uh, I think a lot of people still ride for it as his best album, maybe a lot of people's favorite album. Do you think it's deserving of that?
Was definitely deserving of it at the time, and it's still one of his best projects. I think that's quite clear, whether you have it as his best still or if you ever did. that's a different thing. But you know, again, only a year later, like you get So Far Gone to Thank Me Later quite quick. Thank Me Later, similar to J. Cole's debut album, not the best reception critically, but still songs that hung around. And I remember where I was, like all those songs I mentioned on Thank Me Later, again, they're not the best songs to revisit to now. You really wouldn't put them up as top tier Drake, but people were still digging them at the time, like myself. So then you getting Take Care. There was anticipation for Take Care at this time. And it's really, again, funny to reflect on Drake not yet being all the way at the top because he wasn't actually still there yet. Because especially, like Lil Wayne was still very much a big part of rap, and Drake was still kind of in that shadow. Um, and like you think about Thank Me Later, you have songs like Find Your Love, Fireworks with Alicia Keys, and it was Drake, doing like the singing stuff, the softer stuff. But he's just way less effective at it back then. He
Mhm.
steps up that side of things a lot in only a year's time on Take Care. But I like Take Care most just for the bangers. I think these songs have aged way better than a lot of the rapping stuff on Thank Me Later.
Yeah, I think the title track with Rihanna is probably one of my favorite Drake songs. Period. And I think also getting Rihanna on the track definitely helps and elevates a lot of songs. I think that song just flows and is such a general vibe. I mean, like I know it's like a very cliche thing to say, but it
Mhm.
really is. You just throw it on, you just kind of like lose yourself into the music, and then that's followed up by Marvin's Room, which I think for like the real deep Drake heads, they point to that, and that's like, oh, that's a Drake classic right there. It's one of the best. But you talk about how he levels up with that sing songiness. I think that's a great example where like he actually sounds really pointed in what he's trying to say. I think it's a much more listenable song than almost anything else on Thank Me Later. So I think your point is definitely made in Marvin's Room. What other bangers stand out to you from this?
I gotta say though, I personally don't like Marvin's Room at all, but I do think
That's
it's
funny.
done better than anything on Thank Me Later.
Yeah.
Um, but like you said, yeah, Marvin's Room, like people ride for Marvin's Room
Yeah.
still. Funny enough.
A lot
Uh,
of funny memes about it.
oh yeah. So for me, I think of Headlines, which I believe was one of the
Mm,
first singles. I got that music video. Headlines was, I think, important to think about because that was Drake be like, yo, no, I rap. I got this little edge to me. I remember Charlemagne like really clowning Drake for like the all black aesthetic in the video and
mhm,
stuff, considering he was also going to sing later on in the album. But headlines still like all those verses rule. The hook is awesome. Like that song's
they
tremendous.
know, they know,
Yeah.
they know. So good.
Uh, and like people know "Make Me Proud." I think "Make Me Proud" is still really good. Another great Nicki collab. Again, it feels a little dated because like that is old school Drake and old school Nicki. Still, just feels of a different time, but I still really like it. Um, and you know, for the bars people, like there's people that really ride for Underground Kings. People really like Cameras. I'm not the
Mhm,
biggest fans of those, but they're good tracks. But for me, I think my favorite song on this after Headlines is definitely Lord Knows with Rick Ross
mm,
because that Just Blaze beat is fucking insane still. It goes
mhm.
so hard. And Drake and Ross, they have a storied collab history, especially around this time. A lot of their best songs, like Stay Schemin' and Aston Martin music. But for me, Lord Knows, man, like it just hits and Drake just absolutely spazzes on it.
Yeah, you talk about that beat. It's such a complex beat because
Hmm.
I mean, you have like the typical kind of like drum pattern, but you have that like back and forth like synth kind of going
Yeah.
around it, kind of creating this like swirling sound, and then you get the chorus swelling up,
Yeah.
and then it
Just
comes.
Blaze.
Yeah, it's just such a well done, and yeah, I agree. I think they both sound awesome on that track. Then you get the motto, which I believe was actually a bonus track, if
It
I'm
was,
remembering that.
yes.
But
That's
I
a
think the
tacked on
motto,
now. You wouldn't know it looking
yeah,
at Spotify.
especially looking at some of the collaborations Drake and Lil Wayne have done together. I think the motto stands out as probably one of their best to me, at least one of the most
Yeah.
commercial friendly ones. Um, and yeah, I think just kind of looking through, I think there's a lot of leveling up here. Even Crew Love, I think is a decent track. Probably not my favorite from either of them, but together, like in the weekend Drake, it's pretty good.
I
So
mean, Crew Love with The Weekend, Buried Alive interlude with Kendrick, two
yeah.
clear examples of Drake, giving those artists their biggest look at the time.
Mhm.
And of course, Crew Love led to Drake tried to sign the weekend to OVO, a fellow Toronto, and didn't happen. Obviously, worked out quite well for the weekend, obviously.
Yeah,
Um, and
smart move.
Kendrick would go on to open up for the first leg of Drake's Club Paradise tour alongside ASAP Rocky. Think about that. Drake, ASAP, Kendrick on one tour. Second leg of that tour, I mean, this is summer 2012. I happened to see that. It was
Mm,
Drake with openers J. Cole, Meek Mill, French Montana, and Two Chains. An absolutely insane
yeah.
tour. And again, funny to think about people like Cole and Meek even opening up for Drake. But that's what it was like in 2012. And Take Care, we talked about like does people really remember it finally, but like this just kept the Drake movement going, and like he really started like ascending at this point.
And then, takes a year off, 2013, we get Nothing Was the Same, right? And so, again, we're talking about Drake leveling up, and this feels like just a continuation where he continues to like find his stride, find who he is as an artist, um, and just kind of like, I think there's a lot of really, really good tracks on this. And it's hard because I think one of the knocks on Drake, especially recently, is that he puts out these really, really long albums. I texted you as we started to work our way through this discography, like, man, why the hell doesn't he just make a 40-minute album? Like, just give it to me. Um,
And
and
that's the biggest issue with Drake is like if he
right,
could self censor, if he curate a little bit, he'd actually could probably make a classic. Like, I don't think
right.
Take Care is a classic. It's probably as close as he's gotten, but it's not one of those. And for someone as successful and ubiquitous as Drake has been for over 10 years, it'd be nice legacy wise if he had a full stop, really great album. But he
Mhm.
doesn't have that because he makes them too long.
And I think Nothing Was the Same might be the closest we get to like a curated Drake album where he's trying to, he's not putting everything out there. I mean, Take Care is what, 19 tracks before bonus tracks, something like that. It's insane. But I feel like Nothing Was the Same really stands out to me because it's only 13. There's some longer songs on here, which definitely pad the numbers. But I feel like this is a little bit more concise from Drake. Do you like Nothing Was the Same?
I do like it. I do find it's a little hit or miss for me because it's still a lot of tracks.
Mm,
Um, I definitely remember the hype for this album post Take Care, post that little break. At this point, Drake was starting to kick off the Lucy Gang game he would do, where he would just drop amazing tracks that weren't on the album, just keep things going. I think really the first, and then these were eventually repackaged in Care Package on streaming in 2019. But at this point, you got a 5 a.m. in Toronto, which is one of the most famous of those Drake Lucy's. And going into this album, it's funny because "Started from the Bottom" what was a single, and like
mhm.
again, you just have Drake like hitting you with absolute banger. And like I know some people aren't the biggest fans of it compared to his other bangers because it is a repetitive hook. But I think it still really really holds up. Honestly,
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite tracks on the album.
me too. I actually think the album starts off pretty strong with Tuscan
Tuscan Leather.
Leather.
That's my
Yeah,
favorite intro track he's ever done. One of his best quotables. It's nothing for the radio,
absolutely.
but they still play it though because it's the new Drizzy Drake. It's just the way it goes. Very
Yeah.
introspective way to realize that Drake can put out crap and it's going to be popular. Like he understood that already.
And it's funny because Tuscan Leather, I think, for me, also stands out as one of his better opening tracks. But I think the closing track on the non like deluxe or non bonus track one
Yeah.
is Pound Cake, Paris Morton Music 2,
Yep.
which is, a bit of like a coming to his own moment where Drake is on the same track as Jay-Z and I
Mhm.
think definitely outshines him.
Yeah. A
And
lot
it's a
better than Light Up was on Thank Me Later.
For sure. And so I think, as a closing track, Pound Cake, Paris Morton Music 2 also, I think, stands out to me. And then in between, you mentioned, started from the bottom, you get Worst Behavior. Um, I think it's not a perfect album for sure, but I think there's probably some of the highest highs for me on this. So it definitely stands out as one of my favorites of the whole discography. You mentioned a couple tracks that didn't really hit for you. Is there anything that stands out in particular?
Yeah, I just want to quickly mention shout out Pound Cake for the Childish Gambino freestyle that produced, I believe, on Sway. One of the best rap radio freestyles of the 2010s. Really funny. Um, yeah, so again, it's a long album, right? And like you have him rapping, you got Tuscan Leather, which I think bar for bar is his best track on this. Started from the bottom's a banger. And then you have songs that I like, but like in terms of like Drake banger rankings, they're probably not that high. Like songs like Worst Behavior, which got a music video. Um,
Hold on, we're going home.
yeah, so Cold On We're Going Home, that's like this album's Take Care title track with Rihanna. That's
Yeah.
like that thing, you know. It's got Majid Jordan, who famously were in like the OVO boot camp as artists signed to Drake, helping, you know, write for Drake and make that song. And I guess
Mhm.
this kind of predates like Hotline Bling and stuff in that regard too. But like it's not my favorite in terms of like his like, you know, softer, more R&B stuff, to be honest. And the other songs on this album, like Connect, Own It, they don't, even Wu Tang Forever, kind of unfortunately title if you ask me.
Mm.
Don't really do it for me. All Me, that's another like dated like early 2010s era rap posse cut to me. Um, I like the language as a catchy song, but yeah, I've never really connected with Nothing Was the Same as like a full album. It's really just been the moments song to song.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think those songs work a little bit better for me, but like 305 to My City stands out as something that like a track I didn't really like a lot.
Yeah,
But I do want to say, we one of our favorite albums from I believe it was 2018, maybe 27. No, it must have been 2016. Sampha's album. This is the first time I feel like I'm really
that's right.
hearing Sampha this early. It just kind of continues that string of Drake finding some artists that pop off, some that, like you mentioned, kind of fall into the OVO boot camp and are never to be, heard from again in the same way, and some that pop off a little bit more. But yeah, so nothing was the same. 2 years later, 2015. If you're reading this, it's too late. In kind of listening back through this, I think this was the one that feels a little bit forgotten to me in a sense, and not necessarily forgotten in terms of like people forget that this was an album or don't think about it. But I feel like there's not as many bangers on this that stand out as like the more popular Drake songs to me. But I still think this is a pretty solid album from him. How did you feel about it?
I love this. I love If You're Reading
uh
This so much. Billed as a commercial mixtape, actually,
hmm.
which was I
Oh,
feel like a weird way to coach it because
yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I think this has the best 5 track sequence of any Drake album. Right at the
Wow.
top of this, Legend, Energy, 10 bands, Know Yourself, No Telling. Find me a better 5 tracks in a row on any of his albums. I don't think you can do it. And like I like Legend as like a song, like a slower track because again, just introspective Drake talking about his star, and then you just have him go hard as fuck on Energy, 10 bands, Know Yourself, and No Telling. Know Yourself, Run Through the Six with My Woes. Great quotable,
Yeah.
of course. But like listening back to all those songs, like they sound so good. And yes, some of those songs, like 10 bands, were like a source of, you know, the reference track, ghostwriting controversy that would soon follow. But like I think that's an undeniable run. And then later on you get Star 67 as well, another banger. You get another entry in the uh, the time series. You had 9 a.m. in Dallas on Thank Me Later. I mentioned 5 a.m. in Toronto. You get another one here, 6 p.m. in New York. Those are really popular with the Drake heads. So like this is another one. It's long, so like it's not flawless, but the highs on this really stick with me. And
Yeah.
at the same time, you're getting other stuff. Like I mentioned all the Drake Lucy's. Now we're getting like 0 to 100 and trophies, and we made
Mhm.
it. Like there's just, and of course, my favorite song on this album, How About Now, was only put on the physical release of this commercial mixtape, meaning it was very hard to find, and was later finally made available on Care Package, of course. But How About Now, I think that's my favorite like Drake like crossover like melody song, you know. And Bryson
Mhm.
Tiller had an amazing freestyle of that, which will spring this whole thing. Will Bryson Tiller sign the OVO? Like, at this point, Drake is at his most untouchable. 2015, he's at the top, and he knows he's at the top on this, and he's just having a good ass time, and no one can do anything about it. It's great.
Yeah, I agree that I think those first like 5 or so songs, I don't know, 10 bands doesn't really grab me as much as like Energy or Know Yourself does. No Telling also definitely a great track. I think as I'm like kind of just like looking through the track list as we talk though, and having listened to, this just very recently as we're getting ready for this, I kind of just like don't feel like a lot of these songs stand out to me as much. I think those first couple you mentioned do, um, and this is also when like the Six God stuff came about, right? When he kind of created that
Yes.
persona,
Yes.
and obviously all the tracks have the six in it. One of the tracks is called Six God, so that yeah, I should have known that. I don't know if I really jived as much with that, but I still feel like I think that you can hear like banger Drake all over this, which you and I think more often than you get on a lot of other records, which I think it makes sense why that would really stand out because I know that's I think the kind of Drake that you prefer most, right?
That's correct.
For sure. So there's like Broy Drake, there's Sad Drake, and then you kind of get
There's Drake for
the
dudes. There's Drake for girls. Drake has many fans, a wide audience.
and Drake has experimented a lot, and we kind of get a little bit more of that experimentation just a little bit later in the year with "What a Time to Be Alive." Um, and this is really forgettable to me. Great
Yeah,
title, I gotta say. "What a Time to Be Alive." Awesome album title.
yeah.
I think the track that uses that, I don't even think it's actually called "What Time to Be Alive." It's just
What a time to be alive.
yeah,
Me, yours,
exactly
me,
that
and mine. What
chorus.
song is that? I don't even remember.
I don't even remember. Is it Big Rings? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think that's what it
Yeah,
is. Yep,
Big Rings and Jumpman are the only two tracks from this I think are really worth the
100%.
time. Any others that stand out to you?
No, that's that. It was kind of it's a weird album to think background because it's really made no footprint at all, and it's ultimately been surpassed by future Drake and future collaborations, namely "Used to This" a few years
Mhm.
later, and then of course "Life Is Good," which is approaching a billion streams somehow. I don't even like Life Is Good at all, but it's at over 700 million on Spotify. It's a huge track. It's approaching diamond
Mhm.
certification. It's like I don't understand why people like that song so much. And like even the Drake and feature like energy together, it's like I don't know how much like synergy there was on What a Time to Be Alive. It's just kind of like here's the Drake feature or verse, here's the future verse. Like I don't think they like that's simpatico or anything, you know. And for the most part, a lot of these songs have not stuck around. So I guess most people agree.
Yeah. But this is also when we start getting something from Drake every year. And I don't necessarily feel like that means that the quality of the music isn't as good, but he's just throwing a lot of stuff out there. And as we kind of said, when with Drake, with the amount, the quantity, not everything is going to be quality. Do you feel like Views though, the 2016 album is a quality album from Drake?
Yeah, man. Views was the album I was most looking forward to revisiting now, just to refresh how I feel about it. And it's funny because this album, I didn't dislike it at the time. Thought it was okay. I think there's great highlights, but I feel like a lot of it has not really stuck around, apart from the super obvious highlights. Hotline
Mhm.
Bling, everybody knew as a lead single. Drake really branching out and making a pop song, despite not winning a pop Grammy, which he remarked upon when it happened. Um, and like I like Controlla again as like Drake's at this point really experimenting with other sounds and other genres, which is going to continue. And you also have uh, like a Drake rapping cut that might be familiar, like Weston Road Flows, but it's not like top tier of that kind of stuff, right? It's
Mhm.
familiar like formula from Drake. And like the big highlight, of course, would be the biggest song of Drake's career, "One Dance,"
Mhm.
where he gives WizKid the biggest look of WizKid's career. And in the process, some people aren't a fan of it, like, experimenting with dancehall and making a dancehall track that because he was Drake was just vociferously consumed and, is the reason this album, um, I believe it's still his biggest album to date, largely because that's fueled by One Dance. But also there's a ton of hype coming into Views. Views absolutely crushed it, you know,
Yeah.
for him. But it's an album that like it probably in terms of he has a lot of long albums, this is the one that feels the longest, and that's just because there's just too many misses on it.
And it's also 20 tracks. It's an hour and 20 minutes. You have to set aside a decent chunk of your day. But, a lot of times people say that like the first track of the album can kind of set the tone. And Keep the Family Close is just a very big song, in terms of production and like these large like cuts and things kind of coming into it, large drums at one point to kind of break things down the second half. And I feel like that really does set the tone that this is just a lot, and this really I think is like the beginning of the modern Drake album where he's
Yeah.
just like, I'm going to try a lot of things. I'm going to do a lot of the same things I have. I'm going to start to feel out some new sounds. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head where the highs are high, the lows are just super forgettable. Um, but I think, like you mentioned, One Dance, I think Pop Style, Controlla, and obviously Hotline Bling are like the clear standouts, and
Hmm.
everything else just kind of fades away. It's too bad because you kind of get the Drake Rihanna team up again, and I feel like Too Good falls pretty flat, not nearly as
Right.
interesting as Take Care. So
Yeah. And then they would do it again for Rihanna's album Work, right
yeah,
around this time as well, which was more effective and more successful. Um, yeah, the thing about Views is, you know, it, it. I think he was actually like this is Drake becoming more mature, like being more. Um, I think he's having a more like adult sensibility with a lot of his lyrics, but the songs just aren't there this time around, which is kind of
Mhm.
unfortunate because like you said like this is modern Drake. This was him advancing like artistically. It just so
Mhm.
happened to be like this moment of that advancement was not very good. I like Still Here. I think that one's pretty catchy, but and you mentioned Pop Style. Got some made chains. They call me Chaining Tatum. Don't forget, Pop Style had a Kanye feature at one point, which was taken off as well as I believe it was Jay
Probably a good
Z
call.
or something. Yeah, like
I think so.
yeah, people forget about the original version of that song. Um, but yeah, this is just like this is like the textbook Drake bloat right here,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
no, I agree. Um, And Dave, this was actually the next album was the one I was most excited to go back to because this was the first one we really reviewed on the pod. I was really critical of it at the time. More Life, 2017. And I gotta say, I feel like feel like I'm in Dumb and Dumber right now because I listened to this album and I totally my opinion has shifted greatly. Um,
Wow.
it's a very long album, and I
Yes.
actually almost
Too
feel
long
like
once again.
I feel like if it was like 13 tracks and I got to pick them, I mean, it isn't necessarily an album. It's billed as a playlist, I
Yeah.
believe. So I
Nice
guess I
try,
can,
Drake.
yeah, I guess I can pick and choose how I want to kind of listen to the songs. But
Yeah.
I think the first half and then like one or two tracks from the second half are like really really strong Drake songs. I think there's a lot of songs in the second half though that are really bad, or maybe not bad, but just really forgettable. Um, you know, this is where Drake is really leaning into the dance hall, leaning into drill. In ways, it's I don't know, it's it's a lot of newness from Drake, which I think can be taken different ways, but listening back to me, it really worked. And I found it to be, I think, really interesting because it did sound so much different from everything else before it to
Yeah.
me. And I really liked that. How did you feel listening back to More Life?
Yeah. So obviously it's still too long, still too many songs, but there's a lot of I think important moments on
Yeah.
More Life for Drake. Uh, this is his first time making music with UK artists. You got gigs on here twice with KMT and No Long Talk.
Yeah.
Drake always presented himself, acted as someone who was very into UK hip hop and even non-popular artists. And this was him finally giving a look to someone. In this case, Gigs, a longtime grime veteran. You also have Get It Together, which is like the first big look for Georgia Smith as an R&B
Mhm.
singer. We're very excited to just get that EP from her finally. Passion Fruit, obviously,
Yeah.
making Super Mario Sunshine theme music, but something very different from what he had been doing before. Uh, you know, that's not rap at all. But like
No.
Drake has evolved so much as a singer at this point that he can make a song like Passion Fruit.
Mhm.
Uh, in turn oh, I forgot there's Skepta interlude on this too, speaking of
Yeah.
UK. Um, like the more traditional stuff, like the Atlanta stuff, like you got Sacrifices with Two Chains and Thug, yeah, Portland with Quavo and Travis. I feel like those haven't aged as well as I thought when I first heard them. They're whatever songs really. Um, Glow with Kanye is important because I believe that's their last official collab.
Yeah.
Drake had went to the Wyoming session since then, but I don't think they had made any songs together after this. Funny enough, it's been a while.
Then a pretty public, feud, obviously.
Yeah,
So,
just a
um,
year later.
but yeah, for me, I think if you take the first like 10 songs and you throw in like KMT, I really like Fake Love. I think that
Yeah,
track's really
it's like
strong.
Hotline Bling too, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And then yeah, I think those 12 songs would make a really really strong album. So
I
it
also love
especially
Galchester just as a banger.
yeah, absolutely. I think there's a really great album in here, but it just does get bogged down by the
Right.
uh,
And it's almost
uninconsistency
it's frustrating Drake's disinterest in curating
curating.
more life into something he would call an album. Like you had views just dominate and be super long, especially because at this time, this was when stream chasing was at its, I think, towards its peak, right? But like you were Drake, you're at the top. You don't need to chase streams. You're gonna sell a million records regardless, bro. It's like
Mhm.
this felt so unnecessary, and like
Well,
I was always perplexed at why he would coach it and say this is not an album, not even a mixtape. Like if you're reading this, which again was a weird definition at the time too, but like no, this is just a playlist. Just throw it on. It's like a grab bag, but it's like he was making a lot of artistic decisions and evolutions on this. So it's like it's kind of surprising that he was less interested in it.
I think you actually are speaking to a really important, I don't know, like concept about Drake, which is some artists like really want to be like known for how they put out things. Like I think an artist we talked about a couple weeks ago in our rankings, J. Cole, check that out, soundcloud.com/nostalgia pod, really thinks about like what does this album say? What am I really going for? Whereas I think Drake, he wants to try things. He definitely wants the songs to sound a certain way. I wouldn't ever say he doesn't care, but I think for him, the albums and them having a cohesive story and a real message doesn't always stand out to him. I think he's more like, I want the fame, I want the hits, I want stardom, which is a
Right.
little bit of a different perspective.
Well, and that's why I find it so disappointing because he has all that. He's had all that for years at
Yeah.
this point in time already. And fast forward, he's going to continue to have all that. So you don't need to act that way. You can be more focused with your artistry because the sales will be there regardless.
Yeah, it's just not who he is.
Yeah.
I don't think. But uh that definitely continues on the next one because we go from a what 19 track album to a 25 track album on Scorpion,
Right.
David. We
And
talked about this one.
we did. I would give Drake at least a little more forgiveness with this one because he explained it as rap side, R&B side, something that people had always talked about. It's like, can Drake just make a rap album? Oh, I want Drake to make an R&B album and be so good. He'd heard all that for years, and
Mhm.
he finally attempted to do that here. And I find that actually really funny because I feel like I actually gravitate more towards the R&B side of Scorpion than I do on the rap side, which is not obviously what I would have expected going in. But still, this was the still the age of chasing streams, hard body, and
Mhm.
you have Drake dropping 90 minutes of material. It's just too much.
It's too much. And you know, listening back through this is like the most hit or miss album I think
Totally.
since the early stuff for me because wow, I mean like nonstop. I thought I still go back to that song. I really love the way he just flows over that beat the whole
Yeah.
time,
Take
and
Keith.
Yeah, and the way he like sounds on the chorus, shit don't never stop. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with that. Like,
S- to nonstop real quick, it got a music video, which is the beginning of it is him performing at Wireless, the British music festival.
mm,
Side note, still really frustrated that Drake doesn't do American festivals. He only
yeah,
plays in England or nowhere. But that whole video is just Drake doing nonstop live, and you just see the crowd get hyped and have such a response to nonstop, which honestly I think is more of a B tier banger if you're ranking the litany of Drake bangers.
oh,
But he
for
still
sure.
gets such a response and hype to the song. Well, and, that just speaks to how what Drake can do. It's like this
Hmm.
is like not even like close to a elite song of his, but people still fucking love it when he does it live. And
Totally.
obviously, I believe the second biggest song of his career after One Dance is on this God's Plan, which is a
Yep.
lead single off the first Scary Hours EP. And another song where it's like, lyrically, rapping wise, not Drake's best, but production meeting with performance, it might be Drake's best. It's so fucking catchy,
Yeah, the
and people
quotables on
love
it.
love the song.
Yeah, I mean, this was instantly memed, instantly became a trend. What if I'd never met the broskies? I mean, how many Instagram posts
Oh boy.
had that? So this I think
Only love my dad and my
shows.
mama. I'm sorry. Every Mother's
Right,
Day.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, it just had so many moments, and it's like you really see Drake like on his A game on some of these, and then some of them it's really not so good. I just want to say for the rap side, I also like I'm upset in 8 out of
Yeah.
10. I thought those were pretty good tracks.
I,
I'm
I'm
upset.
upset. Yeah, an awesome moment for the
Yeah.
video, which is him reuniting with a lot of his Degrassi castmates.
Hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely. You said you gravitate more towards the R&B side. Tell me about that. What tracks stand out to you?
Yeah, so I just think it ended up being it's just more interesting to revisit because again, like I love God's Plan. I like Nonstop, just fine. And you mentioned a few others, but like other than that, like Mob Ties, yeah, it's fine, you know. But
Hmm.
it's like, give me Nice for What. Like I think Nice for What's probably
Yeah.
the best song on Scorpion. It's not the most popular song. It's close. It's a very popular song, but it's not the most popular song. But like that's the best one. You have that sampling.
Hmm.
You have that
So good.
video with all the queens we stand in it. Um, an amazing hook. Like I think that's like that might be the last. Like is that the last like best Drake track? Like has he beaten that song lately? I don't think so. Like it's been a
You wouldn't
while.
say Tootsie Slide beats that?
I would not. I would not. And of course, you get In My Feelings, which
Yep.
is our introduction to City Girls. Spawns a dance challenge before TikTok, made those, you know, in vogue,
Mhm.
normal.
Yep.
um, Another banger. So like the three big hits, two of them are on the R&B side, and
Yep.
then I mean I'm still a sucker for After Dark for that Static Major brief cameo, the late
Mm.
Static Major, just because when he harmonizes with Drake or Ty Dolla Sign, I'm like, it's only like 3 seconds every time, but it sounds amazing.
And I think that, as we are wrapping up talking about the albums, this is kind of where Drake is at as like an artist, right? Where he's putting out a lot of stuff and he's going to have like 5 or 6 tracks that are just going to be absolutely huge off these albums. And then there's going to be a lot of stuff people just aren't going to talk about. It could be forgettable. And like you said, Dave, he doesn't need to be this type of artist. He's definitely got the talent to make an all-time album and just like no skips. But it doesn't seem like that's where he's at, and I don't expect that to change with Certified Lover Boy. However, Dave, we're not talking about Certified Lover Boy today. We're talking about rankings. So I think it's time to rank. And for those who have checked out our previous rankings, again, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod, as well as youtube.com/nostalgiapod, Dave and I usually in quite a bit of agreement, but I think we're going to have a bit more of a
Mm.
conversation, maybe an argument today. This is Dave's list. Dave, why don't you run
Yeah.
through your first couple?
So you won't see him here in the tier list picture on YouTube, but What Time to Be Alive, I would have that last. After that, I have Views. Then in the C tier, we have Scorpion and Thank Me Later. So do you have those towards the bottom as well? Like,
Yeah, I do.
it's
So I
it's funny too because a lot of people like respect retrospectively like Views more. I've noticed,
hmm.
but like revisiting it, like as an album, like I just don't see how you can't have it at towards the bottom. Like I was surprised to have Thank Me Later ahead of it. I really was, given how I knew it was going to sound dated. But I like more Thank Me Later songs still. So Views is at the bottom for me after What a Time to Be Alive.
Yeah, so I have Thank Me Later above What Time to Be Alive, but then I have sorry, I have Scorpion right above that. So my number 8 is What Time to Be Alive.
Hmm.
Thank Me Later, number 7. Scorpion at 6. And then, uh, is that right? Yeah, I'm doing that right. And then number
So you have
5
Views at
for
5.
I actually have, if you're reading this, it's too late at 5,
Wow.
which is, where I think the discussion starts. Because for me, I think as I think about Drake as like the artist
Mhm.
that he is now, I do have to say, I think these top 5 for me, I find them to all be pretty good albums. I will just say that. I think, like I said, going back for me as an artist who consume Drake as like pop Drake and not so much like album Drake. Um, if you're reading this, didn't have the commercial hits for me, the ones that like I think like when I think of Drake, I didn't have that like those bunch of songs that stood out as much. Whereas I think as a whole album, it's probably a lot more cohesive. But I think just as I'm kind of listening back, it's like, I think this one's a little bit lower for me. You had that as your number one though, and I think
I
if
do.
you go back and
Above
listen
Take
to
Care.
yeah, and we'll talk about that. Take care in a second, obviously, but I think as you kind of alluded to, that the first five, as well as I think just like the overall
Mhm.
vibe of this being like the banger Drake, kind of on like
Yes.
his broiest,
Drake when he
is
was completely bulletproof
yeah,
while also at the top. Like
makes a lot of
Star Six Seven,
sense.
How About Now? Like there's just so many tracks I still love on this, and this was I think this was Drake just completely at the top and acting like it, and I thought it was really fun because he didn't. It's funny because he's not experimenting yet, so he's not making like a mixed bag album, and
Mhm.
maybe I just like it for its simplicity. Again, he did coach it as a mixtape the whole time,
Right.
but uh, yeah, it's too long, but I feel like and there's stuff you don't need. But all the albums are like
Yeah,
that, so I don't
exactly.
really need to bring that up as like a negative, you know.
Right.
So I feel like for like with the Drake albums, because there's really nothing super cohesive, gravitate towards what you like, and I just like these songs the most of any grouping.
Yeah, that makes sense. Views is what 4 for me, and I definitely think if I were to listen a couple more times, it might flip flop, but Controlla, I think in terms of like those Drake like commercial bangers, I really like
Hmm.
Controlla. One Dance, obviously.
Yeah, I was
So
tempted to have One Dance alone bring Views above Thank Me Later to me, to be honest. Didn't do it
yeah,
in the end.
I think just like the highs of it, and like the poppiness of it really stand out to me. Um, Looking at your list, looks like you have um, Nothing Was the Same and More Life on the Same line. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so like we said, I appreciate More Life for all the things Drake was messing with. I view both albums as too long again. So
Mhm.
just kind of pick what you like. And More Life I have just below Nothing Was the Same, although I have wavered on that a little bit.
Mm.
But I'll defer to, again, like I really love the time when Nothing Was the Same is coming out because then you get all those other Drake Lucy's, which I feel like I think about with the album is just how I kind of like credit Forever as like part of the Thank Me Later calculus, even though it's not technically part of the album. So I feel that way about like the Lucy's and like just what was happening. Like I said, he was really bulletproof during the year. If you're reading this, Nothing Was the Same. Uh, like I think the production is probably better, and even if I don't like a lot of some of the slower songs, like it still feels like really intentional as an album, which is funny to say about an album super long still.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, More Life. As we said, I think the songs where Drake was doing new stuff, whether it's rapping with gigs or making passion fruit, or just kind of just experimenting just a little bit, right? Like
Yeah.
that, it's just refreshing.
I think, and I just want to say, so for me, I had More Life as my number 3, and Nothing Was the Same as my number one. And for a lot of the reasons I talked about when we were deep diving on the albums, um, More Life, I think if you cut out some of the tracks on the playlist, you can probably make one of his strongest, if not his strongest overall record in terms of quality, in my opinion. But just the way he is able to experiment with so many different sounds, dancehall, drill, then bringing some of the typical Drake stuff, and have it all work so cohesively. And really, I think like you mentioned, doing passion fruit, which is like a nothing else in Drake's discography at that point really sounded like that, and he absolutely crushed it. Just felt like he was really finding a groove in terms of experimentation. And with Nothing Was the Same, I think I give it a lot of credit for not only having, I think, some of his like like most recognizable bangers, um, in terms of things like, for me, I really like Worst Behavior. But I mentioned Tuscan Leather, and you mentioned how much you like that one too. Hold On, We're Going Home. Um, and then also kind of having the anointing of like Pound Cake, Paris more in music too. Just felt like this was when like Drake had finally like leveled up and become like Drake as an
Yeah.
artist.
No, it's
So
definitely.
and then we each had Take Care second. And I think we talked about that, but that's really when Drake, I think, anointed himself or announced himself as the force to be reckoned with. And
Right.
yeah,
Like, and not just a popular artist, but also a good one.
yeah, exactly. So, um, it's funny. I keep going back to Take Care. I've been listening to obviously a lot of Drake preparing for this, but Take Care just as a song, with Rihanna, just
Hmm.
really stands out to me as like when Drake is able to collab with people that elevate him, he's you know untouchable, and he gets a lot of hate. I think people really like some of the controversy, but when you really boil it down, to go from being the guy on Degrassi to Drake as the artist is just
Yeah.
unbelievable. So Aubrey Graham, man, what a
Yeah.
guy! You want to just run through the list because we were kind of jumbled there. Our eight
Yeah.
through one
Yeah.
again.
So, What Time to Be Alive at the bottom, then Views, Thank Me Later, Scorpion, More Life, top three, Nothing Was the Same, two, Take Care, and at the top, if you're reading this, it's too late.
So yeah, I had What a Time to Be Alive, Thank Me Later, Scorpion. If you're reading this, it's too late. Views, More Life, Take Care, and Nothing Was the Same. 8 to 1. Real quick, if we didn't include So Far Gone, where do you think it would have fallen for you?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, I like So Far Gone. Obviously, really important for Drake's career, but has a lot of keepers, especially if you count the whole mixtape.
Mhm.
I would put it in like the C tier for me, but above the other one. So I'd have it ahead of What Time We Live, ahead of Views, ahead of Thank Me Later, ahead of Scorpion.
Yeah, for me, the nostalgia factor gets its number 4 on the list, just above Views. So, um, it, nostalgia helps a lot in these cases. So, um, check us out, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod and youtube.com/nostalgiapod. We'll be doing more rankings, so keep following that
Mhm.
along. And also check out our Certified Lover Boy review when that comes out, because we're going to have thoughts.